Leviticus 11. The Lord spoke again to Moses and Aaron, telling them, "Say to the Israelites, of all the beasts of the earth, these ones you may eat. You may eat any animal that has a split hoof completely divided and that chews the cud. But of those that only chew the cud or only have a divided hoof, you are not to eat the following. The camel, though it chews the cud, does not have a divided hoof. It is unclean for you. The rock badger, though it chews the cud, does not have a divided hoof. It is unclean for you. The rabbit, though it chews the cud, does not have a divided hoof. It is unclean for you. And the pig, though it has a split hoof completely divided, does not chew the cud. It is unclean for you. You must not eat their meat or touch their carcasses. They are unclean for you. Of all the creatures that live in the water, whether in the seas or in the streams, you may eat anything with fins and scales. But the following among all the teeming life and creatures in the water are detestable to you. Everything in the seas or streams that does not have fins and scales. They shall be an abomination to you. You must not eat their meat, and you must detest their carcasses. Everything in the water that does not have fins and scales shall be detestable to you. Additionally, you are to detest the following birds, and they must not be eaten because they are detestable: the eagle, the bearded vulture, the black vulture, the kite, any kind of falcon, any kind of raven, the ostrich, the screech owl, the gull, any kind of hawk, the little owl, the cormorant, the great owl, the white owl, the desert owl, the osprey, the stork, any kind of heron, the hoopoe, and the bat. All flying insects that walk on all fours are detestable to you. However, you may eat the following kinds of flying insects that walk on all fours: those having jointed legs above their feet for hopping on the ground. Of these you may eat any kind of locust, katydid, cricket, or grasshopper. All other flying insects that have 4 legs are detestable to you. These creatures will make you unclean. Whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean until evening, and whoever picks up one of their carcasses must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean until evening. Every animal with hooves not completely divided, or that does not chew the cud, is unclean for you. Whoever touches any of them will be unclean. All the 4-footed animals that walk on their paws are unclean for you. Whoever touches their carcasses will be unclean until evening, and anyone who picks up a carcass must wash his clothes, and he will be unclean until evening. They are unclean for you. The following creatures that move along the ground are unclean for you: the mole, the mouse, any kind of great lizard, the gecko, the monitor lizard, the common lizard, the skink, and the chameleon. These animals are unclean for you among all the crawling creatures. Whoever touches them when they are dead shall be unclean until evening. When one of them dies and falls on something, that article becomes unclean. Any article of wood, clothing, leather, sackcloth, or any implement used for work must be rinsed with water and will remain unclean until evening. Then it will be clean. If any of them falls into a clay pot, everything in it will be unclean. You must break the pot. Any food coming into contact with water from that pot will be unclean, and any drink in such a container will be unclean. Anything upon which one of their carcasses falls will be unclean. If it is an oven or cooking pot, it must be smashed. It is unclean and will remain unclean for you. Nevertheless, a spring or cistern containing water will remain clean, but one who touches a carcass in it will be unclean. If a carcass falls on any seed for sowing, the seed is clean. But if water has been put on the seed and a carcass falls on it, it is unclean for you. If an animal that you may eat dies, anyone who touches the carcass will be unclean until evening. Whoever eats from the carcass must wash his clothes and will be unclean until evening. And anyone who picks up the carcass must wash his clothes and will be unclean until evening. Every creature that moves along the ground is detestable. It must not be eaten. Do not eat any creature that moves along the ground, whether it crawls on its belly or walks on 4 or more feet, for such creatures are detestable. Do not defile yourselves by any crawling creature. Do not become unclean or defiled by them. For I am the Lord your God, Consecrate yourselves, therefore, and be holy because I am holy. You must not defile yourselves by any creature that crawls along the ground. For I am the Lord who brought you up out of the land of Egypt, so that I would be your God. Therefore be holy, because I am holy. This is the law regarding animals, birds, all living creatures that move in the water, and all creatures that crawl along the ground. You must distinguish between the unclean and the clean, between animals that may be eaten and those that may not. Leviticus 12. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Say to the Israelites, a woman who becomes pregnant and gives birth to a son will be unclean for 7 days, as she is during the days of her menstruation. And on the 8th day the flesh of the boy's foreskin is to be circumcised. The woman shall continue in purification from her bleeding for 33 days. She must not touch anything sacred or go into the sanctuary until the days of her purification are complete. If, however, she gives birth to a daughter, the woman will be unclean for 2 weeks, as she is during her menstruation. Then she must continue in purification from her bleeding for 66 days. When the days of her purification are complete, whether for a son or for a daughter, she is to bring to the priest at the entrance to the tent of meeting a year-old lamb for a burnt offering and a young pigeon or a turtle dove for a sin offering. And the priest will present them before the Lord and make atonement for her, and she shall be ceremonially cleansed from her flow of blood. This is the law for a woman giving birth, whether to a male or to a female. But if she cannot afford a lamb, she shall bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, one for a burnt offering and the other for a sin offering. Then the priest will make atonement for her, and she will be clean. Leviticus 13. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When someone has a swelling or rash or bright spot on his skin that may be an infectious skin disease, he must be brought to Aaron the priest or to one of his sons who is a priest. The priest is to examine the infection on his skin, and if the hair in the infection has turned white and the sore appears to be deeper than the skin, it is a skin disease. After the priest examines him, he must pronounce him unclean. If, however, the spot on his skin is white and does not appear to be deeper than the skin, and the hair in it has not turned white, the priest shall isolate the infected person for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to re-examine him, and if he sees that the infection is unchanged and has not spread on the skin, the priest must isolate him for another 7 days. The priest will examine him again on the 7th day, and if the sore has faded and has not spread on the skin, the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is a rash. The person must wash his clothes and be clean. But if the rash spreads further on his skin after he has shown himself to the priest for his cleansing, he must present himself again to the priest. The priest will re-examine him, and if the rash has spread on the skin, the priest must pronounce him unclean. It is a skin disease. When anyone develops a skin disease, he must be brought to the priest. The priest will examine him, and if there is a white swelling on the skin that has turned the hair white, and there is raw flesh in the swelling, it is a chronic skin disease, and the priest must pronounce him unclean. He need not isolate him, for he is unclean. But if the skin disease breaks out all over his skin, so that it covers all the skin of the infected person from head to foot, as far as the priest can see, the priest shall examine him, and if the disease has covered his entire body, he is to pronounce the infected person clean. Since it has all turned white, he is clean. But whenever raw flesh appears on someone, he will be unclean. When the priest sees the raw flesh, he must pronounce him unclean. The raw flesh is unclean. It is a skin disease. But if the raw flesh changes and turns white, he must go to the priest. The priest will re-examine him, and if the infection has turned white, the priest is to pronounce the infected person clean. Then he is clean. When a boil appears on someone's skin and it heals, and a white swelling or a reddish white spot develops where the boil was, he must present himself to the priest. The priest shall examine it, and if it appears to be beneath the skin and the hair in it has turned white, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a diseased infection that has broken out in the boil. But when the priest examines it, if there is no white hair in it, and it is not beneath the skin and has faded, the priest shall isolate him for 7 days. If it spreads any further on the skin, the priest must pronounce him unclean. It is an infection. But if the spot remains unchanged and does not spread, it is only the scar from the boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. When there is a burn on someone's skin and the raw area of the burn becomes reddish white or white, the priest must examine it. If the hair in the spot has turned white and the spot appears to be deeper than the skin, it is a disease that has broken out in the burn. The priest must pronounce him unclean. It is a diseased infection. But if the priest examines it and there is no white hair in the spot and it is not beneath the skin but has faded, the priest shall isolate him for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to re-examine him, and if it has spread further on the skin, the priest must pronounce him unclean. It is a diseased infection. But if the spot is unchanged and has not spread on the skin, but has faded, it is a swelling from the burn, and the priest is to pronounce him clean, for it is only the scar from the burn. If a man or woman has an infection on the head or chin, the priest shall examine the infection, and if it appears to be deeper than the skin and the hair in it is yellow and thin, the priest must pronounce him unclean. It is a scaly outbreak, an infectious disease of the head or chin. But if the priest examines the scaly infection, and it does not appear to be deeper than the skin, and there is no black hair in it, the priest shall isolate the infected person for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to re-examine the infection, and if the scaly outbreak has not spread, and there is no yellow hair in it, and it does not appear to be deeper than the skin, then the person must shave himself except for the scaly area. Then the priest shall isolate him for another 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall examine the scaly outbreak, and if it has not spread on the skin and does not appear to be deeper than the skin, the priest is to pronounce him clean. He must wash his clothes, and he will be clean. If, however, the scaly outbreak spreads further on the skin after his cleansing, the priest is to examine him, and if the scaly outbreak has spread on the skin, the priest need not look for yellow hair. The person is unclean. If, however, in his sight the scaly outbreak is unchanged and black hair has grown in it, then it has healed. He is clean, and the priest is to pronounce him clean. When a man or a woman has white spots on the skin, the priest shall examine them, and if the spots are dull white, it is a harmless rash that has broken out on the skin. The person is clean. Now if a man loses his hair and is bald, he is still clean. Or if his hairline recedes and he is bald on his forehead, he is still clean. But if there is a reddish white sore on the bald head or forehead, it is an infectious disease breaking out on it. The priest is to examine him, and if the swelling of the infection on his bald head or forehead is reddish white like a skin disease, the man is diseased. He is unclean. The priest must pronounce him unclean because of the infection on his head. A diseased person must wear torn clothes and let his hair hang loose, and he must cover his mouth and cry out, "Unclean, unclean." As long as he has the infection, he remains unclean. He must live alone in a place outside the camp. If any fabric is contaminated with mildew, any wool or linen garment, any weave or knit of linen or wool, or any article of leather, and if the mark in the fabric, leather, weave, knit, or leather article is green or red, then it is contaminated with mildew and must be shown to the priest. And the priest is to examine the mildew and isolate the contaminated fabric for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest shall re-examine it, and if the mildew has spread in the fabric, weave, knit, or leather, then regardless of how it is used, it is a harmful mildew. The article is unclean. He is to burn the fabric, weave, or knit, whether the contaminated item is wool or linen or leather. Since the mildew is harmful, the article must be burned up. But when the priest re-examines it, if the mildew has not spread in the fabric, weave, knit, or leather article, the priest is to order the contaminated article to be washed and isolated for another 7 days. After it has been washed, the priest is to re-examine it, and if the mildewed article has not changed in appearance, it is unclean. Even though the mildew has not spread, you must burn it, whether the rod is on the front or back. If the priest examines it and the mildew has faded after it has been washed, he must cut the contaminated section out of the fabric, leather, weave, or knit. But if it reappears in the fabric, weave, or knit, or on any leather article, it is spreading. You must burn the contaminated article. If the mildew disappears from the fabric, weave, or knit, or any leather article after washing, then it is to be washed again, and it will be clean. This is the law concerning a mildew contamination in wool or linen fabric, weave or knit, or any leather article, for pronouncing it clean or unclean. Leviticus 14. Then the Lord said to Moses, "This is the law for the one afflicted with a skin disease on the day of his cleansing, when he is brought to the priest. The priest is to go outside the camp to examine him, and if the skin disease of the afflicted person has healed, the priest shall order that 2 live clean birds, cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop be brought for the one to be cleansed. Then the priest shall command that one of the birds be slaughtered over fresh water in a clay pot, and he is to take the live bird together with the cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop, and dip them into the blood of the bird that was slaughtered over the fresh water. 7 times he shall sprinkle the one to be cleansed of the skin disease. Then he shall pronounce him clean and release the live bird into the open field. The one being cleansed must wash his clothes, shave off all his hair, and bathe with water. Then he will be ceremonially clean. Afterward, he may enter the camp, but he must remain outside his tent for 7 days. On the 7th day he must shave off all his hair, his head, his beard, his eyebrows, and the rest of his hair. He must wash his clothes and bathe himself with water, and he will be clean. On the 8th day he is to bring 2 unblemished male lambs, an unblemished ewe lamb a year old, a grain offering of 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with olive oil, and 1 log of olive oil. The priest who performs the cleansing shall present the one to be cleansed, together with these offerings, before the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting. Then the priest is to take one of the male lambs and present it as a guilt offering, along with the log of olive oil, and he must wave them as a wave offering before the Lord. Then he is to slaughter the lamb in the sanctuary area, where the sin offering and burnt offering are slaughtered. Like the sin offering, the guilt offering belongs to the priest. It is most holy. The priest is to take some of the blood from the guilt offering and put it on the right earlobe of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Then the priest shall take some of the log of olive oil, pour it into his left palm, dip his right forefinger into the oil in his left palm, and sprinkle some of the oil with his finger 7 times before the Lord. And the priest is to put some of the oil remaining in his palm on the right earlobe of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on top of the blood of the guilt offering. The rest of the oil in his palm, the priest is to put on the head of the one to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before the Lord. Then the priest is to sacrifice the sin offering and make atonement for the one to be cleansed from his uncleanness. After that, the priest shall slaughter the burnt offering and offer it on the altar with the grain offering to make atonement for him, and he will be clean. If, however, the person is poor and cannot afford these offerings, he is to take 1 male lamb as a guilt offering to be waved to make atonement for him, along with 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with olive oil for a grain offering, a log of olive oil, and 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, whichever he can afford, one to be a sin offering and the other a burnt offering. On the 8th day he is to bring them for his cleansing to the priest at the entrance to the tent of meeting before the Lord. The priest shall take the lamb for the guilt offering, along with the log of olive oil, and wave them as a wave offering before the Lord. And after he slaughters the lamb for the guilt offering, the priest is to take some of the blood of the guilt offering and put it on the right earlobe of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot. Then the priest is to pour some of the oil into his left palm and sprinkle with his right forefinger some of the oil in his left palm 7 times before the Lord. The priest shall also put some of the oil in his palm on the right earlobe of the one to be cleansed, on the thumb of his right hand, and on the big toe of his right foot, on the same places as the blood of the guilt offering. The rest of the oil in his palm, the priest is to put on the head of the one to be cleansed, to make atonement for him before the Lord. Then he must sacrifice the turtle doves or young pigeons, whichever he can afford, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering, together with the grain offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement before the Lord for the one to be cleansed. This is the law for someone who has a skin disease and cannot afford the cost of his cleansing. Then the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When you enter the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as your possession, and I put a contamination of mildew into a house in that land, the owner of the house shall come and tell the priest, 'Something like mildew has appeared in my house.' The priest must order that the house be cleared before he enters it to examine the mildew, so that nothing in the house will become unclean. After this, the priest shall go in to inspect the house. He is to examine the house, and if the mildew on the walls consists of green or red depressions that appear to be beneath the surface of the wall, the priest shall go outside the doorway of the house and close it up for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest is to return and inspect the house. If the mildew has spread on the walls, he must order that the contaminated stones be pulled out and thrown into an unclean place outside the city. And he shall have the inside of the house scraped completely, and the plaster that is scraped off dumped into an unclean place outside the city. So different stones must be obtained to replace the contaminated ones, as well as additional mortar to replaster the house. If the mildew reappears in the house after the stones have been torn out, and the house has been scraped and replastered, the priest must come and inspect it. If the mildew has spread in the house, it is a destructive mildew. The house is unclean. It must be torn down with its stones, its timbers, and all its plaster, and taken outside the city to an unclean place. Anyone who enters the house during any of the days that it is closed up will be unclean until evening. And anyone who sleeps in the house or eats in it must wash his clothes. If, however, the priest comes and inspects it, and the mildew has not spread after the house has been replastered, he shall pronounce the house clean, because the mildew is gone. He is to take 2 birds, cedar wood, scarlet yarn, and hyssop to purify the house, and he shall slaughter one of the birds over fresh water in a clay pot. Then he shall take the cedar wood, the hyssop, the scarlet yarn, and the live bird, dip them in the blood of the slaughtered bird in the fresh water, and sprinkle the house 7 times. And he shall cleanse the house with the bird's blood, the fresh water, the live bird, the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the scarlet yarn. Finally, he is to release the live bird into the open fields outside the city. In this way, he will make atonement for the house, and it will be clean. This is the law for any infectious skin disease, for a scaly outbreak, for mildew in clothing or in a house, and for a swelling, rash, or spot to determine when something is clean or unclean. This is the law regarding skin diseases and mildew. Leviticus 15. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Say to the Israelites, when any man has a bodily discharge, the discharge is unclean. This uncleanness is from his discharge, whether his body allows the discharge to flow or blocks it. So his discharge will bring about uncleanness. Any bed on which the man with the discharge lies will be unclean, and any furniture on which he sits will be unclean. Anyone who touches his bed must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean until evening. Whoever sits on furniture on which the man with the discharge was sitting must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean until evening. Whoever touches the body of the man with a discharge must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean until evening. If the man with the discharge spits on one who is clean, that person must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean until evening. Any saddle on which the man with the discharge rides will be unclean. Whoever touches anything that was under him will be unclean until evening. And whoever carries such things must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean until evening. If the man with the discharge touches anyone without first rinsing his hands with water, the one who was touched must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean until evening. Any clay pot that the man with the discharge touches must be broken, and any wooden utensil must be rinsed with water. When the man has been cleansed from his discharge, he must count off 7 days for his cleansing, wash his clothes, and bathe himself in fresh water, and he shall be clean. On the 8th day he is to take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, come before the Lord at the entrance to the tent of meeting, and give them to the priest. The priest is to sacrifice them, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. In this way, the priest will make atonement for the man before the Lord because of his discharge. When a man has an emission of semen, he must bathe his whole body with water, and he will be unclean until evening. Any clothing or leather on which there is an emission of semen must be washed with water, and it will remain unclean until evening. If a man lies with a woman and there is an emission of semen, both must bathe with water, and they will remain unclean until evening. When a woman has a discharge consisting of blood from her body, she will be unclean due to her menstruation for 7 days, and anyone who touches her will be unclean until evening. Anything on which she lies or sits during her menstruation will be unclean, and anyone who touches her bed must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean until evening. Whoever touches any furniture on which she was sitting must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean until evening. And whether it is a bed or furniture on which she was sitting, whoever touches it will be unclean until evening. If a man lies with her and her menstrual flow touches him, he will be unclean for 7 days, and any bed on which he lies will become unclean. When a woman has a discharge of her blood for many days at a time other than her menstrual period, or if it continues beyond her period, she will be unclean all the days of her unclean discharge, just as she is during the days of her menstruation. Any bed on which she lies or any furniture on which she sits during the days of her discharge will be unclean, like her bed during her menstrual period. Anyone who touches these things will be unclean. He must wash his clothes and bathe with water, and he will be unclean until evening. When a woman is cleansed of her discharge, she must count off 7 days, and after that she will be ceremonially clean. On the 8th day she is to take 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons and bring them to the priest at the entrance to the tent of meeting. The priest is to sacrifice one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. In this way the priest will make atonement for her before the Lord for her unclean discharge. You must keep the children of Israel separate from their uncleanness, so that they do not die by defiling my tabernacle, which is among them. This is the law of him who has a discharge, of the man who has an emission of semen whereby he is unclean, of a woman in her menstrual period, of any male or female who has a discharge, and of a man who lies with an unclean woman. And with that, we bring today's reading to a close. May these sacred words dwell richly in your heart and guide your path in wisdom and truth. Until we meet again to continue our journey through the Holy Scriptures, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Go in his peace.